So the other day I wrote this blog about music and whether or not it's misogynistic or it's rather more gender inequality in music. And I thought, why not do a vlog about this topic as well? So here goes. So the other night I went off to a local venue to a metal/metalcore gig, and there was something that I noticed about the show while I was there looking around, and both of them happened to involve women. The first thing I noticed was the bands themselves. There were 4 bands playing that night, and they all have 5 members each. Now, every single member of these bands were men. There wasn't a single woman, not one woman as a musician, a front person, anybody, any role within any of the bands. And so that basically means that on the night 20 men got up and performed, which is great, but where were the women? And since that's what really prompted me to blog about this experience, and since that I've spoken to other women who happen to be in bands who are trying to make it in the music industry themselves, and they've all said the same thing, which I thought was quite interesting. All the women I've spoken to who are in bands said the same thing. They all said that if they were guys, they'd have been given an easier ride of things, they would have been given more opportunities, and they don't think they're being taken seriously because they are women. They're either in all female groups or they are a woman in a band with some guys. And I think this is a really sad point of view and a really sad way of looking at things, but we'll sort of come back to that later. The other thing I noticed the other night at this gig was the women in the crowd. Predominantly there were men there, but it was a very small venue and it was a very small crowd, but there were a proportion of the crowd that were women. The trouble was there were some massive great lumps of guys there, and they wanted to chuck themselves about. Now, yeah, okay, I'm not going to begrudge anyone having a good time. They were enjoying themselves in the circle pit. They were chucking themselves around, windmilling, kicking out, stuff like that. But I noticed that all of the women were stood either at the edges or at the back, and we were kind of keeping one eye on what the guys in the crowd were up to, not just what the bands were doing, because if you took your eye off the ball for a second, you're liable to get smacked into, which was not pleasant. You had to try and move out the way and anticipate what these guys were trying to do. It almost felt like the women there were a second thought in the crowd, and that we couldn't go forward and see what was going on because of the activity that was taking place. It's almost like we were in the way. I get the impression that this is not just the case in rock, metal, blah blah blah, pop music as well. I mean, take for example One Direction. They're the biggest pop group in the world today. There's 5 lads in their early 20s. Each of them is worth around £14 million. I mean, how can female counterparts even begin to compete with this sort of level? It's ridiculous. I mean, the lads recently filmed themselves smoking marijuana, and rather than getting vilified, they get praised for it almost in the press. On top of that, a couple of years back, I don't know if anyone remembers this, a couple of them claimed they caught chlamydia off of a koala bear. I have never known anybody, and I've known a few people go to Australia and hold koala bears. I've never known anyone come back with chlamydia from holding a koala bear. So I smell a bit, you know. Well, take female counterparts in the pop industry. Some of the biggest names out there today. Let's take people like Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Rihanna, etc. Miley Cyrus, all of that lot. Rather than having comments made about their music and whether or not it's good or bad, you know, it's a matter of opinion, they are relegated to the sidebar of shame more often than they have comments made about their music. And they, to anyone who doesn't know what the sidebar of shame is, it's basically something that was invented by the Daily Mail, and it essentially picks apart women's bodies. And it's always about the blemishes they have, the wardrobe malfunction they had, all sorts of weird, stupid comments about female form that degrades them, without a single comment made about their musical ability. Of course, society needs to change its views on women in the music industry. You know, until the general music buying, gig attending population sees women as having as much worth as men in the music industry, they're not going to be fairly represented until promoters decide to bring female artists on to their circuit and give them opportunities. It's not going to be a fair market for women. And particularly in the underground music scene, I know of a handful of bands that have got female band members, but they don't seem to get the same sort of recognition or representation as the male bands, or predominantly male bands, do. I think also that people need to understand that there are more women getting into rock music today. I think before it was a very male-dominated area in terms of fans, and I think now more and more women are getting in on rock music. They're enjoying it more. This is something actually that's been recognised, to be fair to them, something that's recently been recognised by Kerrang magazine. They've worked out that the majority of their readers are now young women in a certain age category from their teens to the 20s, and they're trying to make the magazine more appropriate and accessible for them. So they've got rid of a lot of the misogyny that you may have found even 10 years ago in this magazine. And they're trying to promote stronger female role models from more well-established bands like We Are the In Crowd, Paramore, bands like that, and really showing the merits of women in rock music and what that can mean. And they even did a feature on the changing sort of gender face of rock music and their fans. But there's still a lot of work to do, and I think this basically came to light the other night when I was at this gig. There's a lot of work that society needs to put into changing the overall view of how women are seen with regards to the music industry. Going defensive at the moment because I know that some people are going to pick up on this. Yes, I do promotional work. I run a street team for a particular male musician, artist, visionary. But the difference is I consider him a friend, and this particular person came to me and asked me to do this work for him. It wasn't a case of, oh, I'm just going to do it anyway. He asked me to do it. I have the proof. If anyone wants to see the proof, I have the written proof that he came and asked me to help him out. And I am not a one to say no to friends, which is why, yes, I know he's a man, but yes, I am helping him out. Now, I've got a lot of very talented female friends, and you know who you are. If you're watching this, you know who you are. And if they want any help at all, all they have to do is ask, and I will help them out in exactly the same way. There's not a gender bias there, that's just a friend asking a friend. Just in case anyone picks up on that and goes, wait a second. Also, he's a very pretty boy, and he actually looks a bit like a woman, so no, ignore that, that's a little bit of an in-joke, don't worry about that one. So yeah, what's your opinion on gender equality or inequality within the music scene? What kind of genre are you into, and how are women represented throughout that genre, do you think? I mean, there's a whole range of different genres I haven't even looked at. I mean, sort of hip-hop, R&B, that sort of area I haven't really looked at because it's not something I know much about. I see things and I hear reports of things which suggest that there's even more misogyny in that, and that actually women get a really bad press through that style of music. But anyone who's more into that, I'd be really interested to hear what your take is on that particular style of music and how women are seen in that style of music. And leave comments below, or you can tweet me, and my user ID is somewhere here that I've put up. So yes.